Welcome everybody to UFO Man Live. My name is Tim, or UFO Man. You can call me either one. Doesn't matter. Tonight we have a very special guest. His name is Jeff NUCCETELLI. He is a retired United States Air Force. He's going to discuss a very significant sighting that took place back in 2003 over Vandenberg Air Force Base. Please welcome our very special guest.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome, Jeff. Great to have you with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
The two people we have returning on the panel are Polly Rotterman down on the left side, and on the right side is Nos. Please welcome them as well.
Greetings.
Okay, so what we're going to do, Jeff, we're going to make you big.
Right.
All righty. First question I got for you, Jeff, is tell us a little bit about yourself and how you first got wind of the UFO topic, and if you can elaborate a little bit concerning the first sighting of the red square, I would appreciate it.
Okay. Yeah, so I was kind of born into the UFO topic. So my father, so I'm from Western Pennsylvania. I grew up in a small coal mining town south of Pittsburgh. My dad was a coal miner, and we lived out in the country. So when my father was a teenager, him and his buddies were outside one summer evening, and they witnessed the Kecksburg fireball come in. So the town where I grew up in is about 30 miles from Kecksburg. And my dad and his friends saw this giant fireball come screaming over the sky, and they thought it landed over the hill in town. It was so big and close. So they all went running over the hill to try to find it, and obviously couldn't find anything because it had landed, 30 or 40 miles away. And that's all my father had seen. And then, over the next few days, he heard all the stories about a crash landing and the Army coming in and recovering a craft. So my father saw that. And then a few years later, I think that the Kecksburg event was in like 1967. And I think the following year, in like 1968, my grandparents on my mother's side saw the Lake Erie Presque Isle UFO landing.
Wow.
So yeah, they were out on a little fishing boat. They used to go to Lake Erie every year for a fishing trip. And it was getting near evening, and my grandfather and grandmother were in a little boat, and they were coming in. And there's a state park and a lighthouse at Presque Isle. And they saw this saucer-like craft. It was more shaped like a pentagon. And it came and landed on the beach right near the lighthouse. And my grandparents saw that happen. They got into the shore, and my grandmother wanted to run to the beach and investigate. And my grandfather, who was a World War II combat vet, Purple Heart recipient, was like, no way. And he refused, and they went back to the hotel. But in the morning, my grandmother made my grandfather go to the beach. And by that time, the police had been there. The FBI was involved. Project Blue Book was involved. But that morning, they went out and they found impressions on the beach. This craft had left 8-inch depressions in the sand. And my grandmother said she found that parts of the beach had been turned to glass. And she collected some of those. And I'm on a quest to find if those fragments are still in her tackle box. So me and my mother.
Oh my God! Please find that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that would be proof or evidence right there.
The definite proof. Oh my God.
Could be. So I grew up hearing these stories, and when I was really young, my grandmother would watch Close Encounters with me, and she would tell me like, this is real. Like the movie's not real, but these things happen, and she would tell me about that incident, and my grandfather would never talk about it. So I grew up with that framework, and then I joined the military, and so I guess I could pause there, and if you guys want to ask any questions or.
Not?
Yeah, if you can find the glass that was created by that, there's a lot more data that would be in that than would be expected.
Yeah, and the issue is when I dug into the case files on that incident, there was no mention of glass or the beach, the sand being turned to that.
Right.
So, but I'm going to find out.
Well, absolutely, and I'm thinking just on the molecular analytical level as far as the information that could be contained therein. Like when glass forms, any particulate matter that is in it that has ferrous attributes, iron particles, anything along those lines, get locked in the magnetic state that they're in when it fuses, right? So there's information that's recorded on that, but also whatever would be coming off the craft if there were actually emissions, like if they were using a magnetar fusion chamber for what they were doing, then the ionic emissions of the particulate matter that's being formed by their fusion process would leave those ionized particles in the glass that's forming, which would reveal the composition inside what they're using for the engine structure. Mm. So those little pieces of glass offer a lot of data.
They could, yeah, yes. For sure.
Yeah.
And then, so do you want me to go into Vandenberg?
Yes, go into the Vandenberg case and elaborate as much as you'd like.
Okay, great.
And if you could only also please describe the base, how does it look, the compart, like everything inside.
I do have one question about the sighting at Vandenberg before I lose my train of thought. If you could also let us know if the sighting produced any sound or had any smells, like ozone or anything of that nature around the vehicle.
Nothing at Vandenberg was reported in any of the incidents like that. No sound, no sounds, no smells.
No flashing lights, nothing.
There were lights, but they weren't. I guess I could get into the details, but they were illuminated. Okay. It's strange. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
So Vandenberg, back in 2003, I arrived at Vandenberg in 1999. So I'd already been there for a few years, pretty well established. And Vandenberg was part of U.S. Space Command at that time. And its primary mission was developing and launching space assets. So we had various launch pads on the installation. We had the capability to put up like the largest rockets in our inventory, like the big Titan IVs and things like that. So it was a very important base. And at the time, we were the primary base to test the National Missile Defense Project. And this project was the executive branch's like #1 military priority at the time, or one of them. They were basically building out a new Star Wars program to protect the nation from incoming ballistic missiles. So a lot of it,
like a nuclear things there.
Yeah, this was generally a system to intercept things in space, like incoming ballistic missiles.
Right.
Kind of the Iron Dome.
Yeah, this would have been a precursor to that.
Okay.
So this was basically next generation technology, extremely advanced technology that they were employing and testing. heavy focus from the executive branch. So, for example, when we were testing these systems, many times the president would be watching the launch from Washington, D.C. So these were like at the top of the administration's priority list.
Right.
So very important. So in 2003, October 14th, at the time I was assigned to Bravo flight. A flight is like a platoon. So we operated 2 flights per day. So we would come in and work for a 12-hour shift, and the next flight would come in for 12 hours. So 2 flights per day. I was working the evening shift, and I came in about an hour early to work to do changeover with the offgoing leadership. So at the time, I was the senior law enforcement sergeant on the flight. So I come into work, and as I pull up, I notice there's a crowd of people waiting, and I could tell that something has happened, and they're ready to tell me about it. And that wasn't very unusual because we were a very busy base. We had a very robust like law enforcement mission. We worked a lot with like California Highway Patrol and Santa Barbara County Sheriff. So we had a lot of activity. So, you know, I come walking up to all these people, and I'm expecting to hear about some crazy like event that happened on the highway. And they all start to tell me that they had a real world UFO event that morning. And very quickly I realized they're not pulling a prank. This is serious. And I walk over to the command center, and I meet with the leadership on duty. And they start to tell me that at 08:45 hours, they get a call at the command center from another command center called Range Control. Range Control is the command center that oversees all the various launch pads. So Range Control called the police and said, hey, there's something weird going on North Base. And the story was 3 Boeing contractors were working at Launch Facility 21 on the north end of the base on a National Missile Defense Project site. And one of the contractors had walked out of the hangar or the building, and there's a gigantic, massive, glowing red square hovering over the launch pad at low altitude, just sitting there. And the guy's like, he can't believe what's going on. He observes it for, a few minutes, and then he runs in and he picks up the landline and he calls 2 of his coworkers, and he's like, come out here and look at what's happened. So they came out, and the 3 of them observed this thing just silently hovering over the pad. And they said after a few minutes, it drifted further onto the installation, it drifted east onto the base, and then it went over some hills, and then they lost visual. So they run in, they pick up the phone, they call Range Control, and they report it. They describe the object, give them the details, and then Range Control calls around to all the various other units on base. They call the weather station, they call the command post, and on, trying to find out what the object is. And all those reports come back negative. They say there's no weather balloons, there's no helicopters or aircraft, nothing on radar. So absolutely anomalous, right? So after Range Control received all that data, then they called us and requested that we send an armed patrol to investigate. And the flight leadership, the flight chief and their senior patrolman, my counterpart, had responded out there. They didn't see any objects in the sky on the way there or the way back. They met with the contractors. They got the story, and they had each one of them write a sworn handwritten statement describing what happened. And basically then they wrapped it up, and they came back, they typed up a report, and they notified everyone in the chain of command that needed to know. So those notifications went through my entire chain of command, through the police chain of command, all the way up to my commander. And then they also notified the command post, and then the command post up-channeled the information, led probably all the way to higher headquarters. So that was the initial event. That's what I walked into that morning.
When was it entered into the daily blotter?
It had already been entered by the time I came on duty. So typically what happens is over the course of a 12-hour period, the blotter is constantly updated as, accidents happen and alarms are going off. So by the time I'm coming on duty, the blotter's complete. It's been reviewed by the leadership, and they're, it's logged.
Okay, I guess I got an issue with if it's public data on the blotter, then why is the information up channeled to just people that need to know? Because then it would be kind of classified.
Yeah, it's basically just a functional issue.
Okay.
So the police blotter is a publicly available record, but it is classified for official use only when it's
Right.
completely filled out and signed by the flight chief. So
Okay,
then it becomes a for official use only document, because it does contain personal information, PPI, like people's addresses and their license plate number.
Right.
It also includes details on things like a sexual assault or things like that, right? So it's a law enforcement use document only when complete.
Right.
The notifications are a separate thing. So in the military, we would have, it's called a notification matrix. It's a checklist for every single type of incident we have. And it will tell you exactly who you notify for every type of incident. So for example, if we have like a DUI, somebody gets a DUI, that will have a checklist. And it will tell us, you need to notify their first sergeant, their commander, the support group commander, and maybe JAG and whoever. But if it's like, let's say something serious, like a potential like a violent crime, it would be a more detailed. It would be like, okay, now you contact the Office of Special Investigations and maybe medical.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So the checklist will tell you who needs to be notified for a particular incident. Now, we didn't have a UFO checklist, and this incident is logged officially as a patrol response / unidentified flying object. We did not have a checklist to run if a UFO showed up.
Right.
So what they did in this situation was they notified everybody they could imagine that needed to know. And that included everybody in my chain of command, the command post, all the weather station, on and on and on.
So there's many people that are aware of the sighting and could still come forward.
Yeah, and their names are captured in the documents I have provided to Congress. Yeah.
Good.
All that data is captured.
Good.
Yeah.
And that was provided to Arrow?
Yeah, Arrow, the FBI, and Congress have those documents.
Good. Polly?
So, in your opinion, where and why does this exactly get stuck? Because the way you did everything you needed to do. All the reports were done. Everyone was giving, the reports about what happened. And then, something huge happened here. You don't see just a football thing inside on your head, just like that. So where does that get stuck and we don't get that information? What happened there? What happened next?
So at the time, it was taken very seriously. No one was trying to debunk this or ridicule it. Now, there were people that blew it off. There were people that were involved and they were on duty, when this happened. And when I talked to them about it, they're like, it's probably just a balloon. And I'm like, really?
Yeah,
really? So there were people that were completely closed-minded about it. But that was a very small percentage of the people. Most people were like, this is extraordinary, and we need to investigate and find out what's flying over the installation. So it was taken very seriously. And at the same, during this October time frame, October 2003, we had an incursion. There were multiple events that happened on multiple days that were investigated and captured the same in reports, the same way the initial event was. So everyone that I was working around knew these events were occurring. There was no like cover up or anything. It just, we were operating in our own kind of little world. We're cops on the base, working long hours and shifts, and we weren't really interacting with the general public. So I was kind of isolated while this was all going on, and I don't know how the rest of the world would respond.
Go ahead, Polly.
I'm sorry, I just have another question. There were many witnesses there, and you have a new podcast now. I want to congratulate you for that. I will put the link in our chat so everyone will have it. You've been trying to get those witnesses and find again their testimonies. Has it been easy for you to get those people to talk, or are they just, didn't happen and I don't want to talk about it?
It's varied. I had, so the way this played out, initially, I had found Ryan Graves, and I had all this documentation that I'd been sitting on for like over 20 years, right? So I knew these events were real. I knew they were happening. And then over the years, I would see other events come out publicly, and then I would see the stigma and the ridicule and the X-Files music, and I would get really upset about that, because I'm like, I don't know if this particular case is real, but I know the phenomenon is real, and I know these things are happening to military personnel, right? Yes. So that was the motivation. So the way it played out, I got a hold of Ryan Graves. We established some trust, and then he walked me forward through the process and introduced me to Congress and the Senate and Arrow and on and on. Right?
Yes.
Now, in the back, while that was playing out, I was still kind of formulating a plan to bring the case public. This was not public. But then what happened was Representative Luna brought it up during the hearing, and we were not expecting that. So I was completely taken by surprise, right?
Oh my God, so exciting.
Yeah. And then I had not talked to any of the other witnesses yet, except for one. So then I had to call them and tell them, hey man, I've got us into some trouble here. And luckily for me, these are people that know me and trust me, and they were willing to come out publicly and support me. So that helped. Now, there are other witnesses that do not want to come out public, and I understand why. So I guess the long story short is there were at least 80 to 120 people that know this happened, the Vandenberg event, and many of them are willing to talk about it. Some are not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we cannot judge them, I guess.
No, I totally, and I never tried to pressure anyone to come out. And because I know, there is stigma, and this can affect your career.
Yes.
And I've definitely experienced that. It hasn't been all sunshine for me either.
Okay,
so I always give people some caution about, coming out and thinking about the consequences, because it can impact your family life, your social life, and your business, for sure. Yeah.
Yes, I totally agree.
Okay, you said there was the red square over the North Base launch facility.
Right.
Can you tell us about the second one?
Sure. So that happens in the morning. I come on duty. My entire flight is briefed on this situation. I've got the paperwork now. I've got the briefing from the people that responded. And then I go out hunting for UFOs. Me and my friends are like, we can't believe this is real. This is really happening. So I go get some NVGs. I get a thermal imager and some binocs. And me and my buddies go out hunting UFOs that night. So sometime around midnight, I'm back on the command center hanging out with my buddies. And we're talking about the incident. And then a radio transmission comes in from our security patrol at Space Launch Facility 4 on South Base. This is a very high level, highly protected site with the highest classification in the U.S. military for protection. So this is a critical asset. So the call comes in, the transmission, something like, be advised, we've got visual contact with another strange light over the Western Ocean. And they describe it moving somewhat erratically. The light seems weird. It's not behaving like an aircraft. It's just kind of hovering out there over the Western Ocean. So my friend is the dispatcher. He tells the patrol, roger that, be advised, I'll post patrols about it, keep a visual, let us know if anything happens. So I start to head down to that location. I get in my patrol car and I'm driving. And more transmissions start to come in from that region. Other patrols are calling in. Yeah, I see a light too. Wow, this thing is moving weird. The light is changing. And as I'm driving, all hell breaks loose. And the transmissions start to come in very frantic. People are now nervous and scared. And they're saying, this light is getting bigger, it's getting brighter, it's moving really weird. And then they start yelling and screaming over the radio, and they're saying, oh my God, this thing is coming right at us, it's coming right for us, and now it's right here, it's right on top of us.
Wow.
And then it was just pandemonium, right? So we've got other patrols chiming in, they're calling in additional information. I'm driving code 3, trying to get there. I've got my head out the window, trying to get a visual. And then I remember a distinct lull in the radio traffic. And then they called in, they said, it's gone. It shot off. It's gone. And I'm like, okay, what is going on? So a few minutes later, I get there. Everybody's waiting for me. And basically what all 5 of the cops that were on duty were all together when this happened. And what they said was, the one patrol noticed the light, they called it in, and then all the other patrols in the area congregated up to the entry control point to watch it together, like what's going on. So everybody's together, all 5 of them. And they said the light started to really get weird. It started to change in luminosity. And then it started to move strangely, like to kind of flutter around, not like an aircraft. And then it suddenly started to zoom in. And they said it got big and super bright and rushed in. And then as it got really close, the light went out and it went dark. And then they looked up and it was hovering at low altitude. It was this black matte color. They couldn't make out really any detail. And it was just enormous. It like took up their whole field of vision. And it was either like another like rectangle or flat square object. And all 5 of them just stood there in awe, staring up at this thing for about a little bit less than a minute. And then it just shot off like a cannon and vanished. No noise, no nothing. It was just this weird blot in the sky. And so I talked to everybody. Then I separated everybody. I did a quick interview. I had them write a statement. And then my boss came out and other patrols came out. And we all talked about it. And the same thing happened. I generated a report. We put it in the blotter. We up-channeled the information through our chain of command and to the command post. And we reported it because this was a security violation on a
Yes.
asset absolutely critical to national security.
Yeah.
So that was event 2.
How was that one reported? The same way as the first one?
I think that was reported exactly the same way, unannounced.
Well, being that it was, I was saying, being that it was at the most classified, protected site in the U.S. military, I would think that maybe the report protocol would have been a little more stringent.
The checklist that was run was probably different, because when you're different, you're dealing with a there's basically 4 classifications of protection levels, and they go through. 1 is the top, protection level 1, and that would be a nuclear weapon or something that's just absolutely critical, right? That you cannot lose. And deadly force is authorized to prevent any kind of incident with that. We don't have to we can just kill people to protect that asset. So if you jump over a fence and run towards that asset, you die. Period. So I'm trying to get this across to the public, like how serious this is. And
Yes.
so we might have made additional notifications, but anytime there's a security incident on any of these classifications, like 1 through 3, the security mechanism, the reporting mechanism is basically the same.
Okay.
It's going all the way up to the top. And if you have a security incident on an important resource, it goes all the way up the chain of command.
That's what I was wondering. Okay. Nice.
Well, first, I'm reminded that Vandenberg also had that prior problem of ICBM testing and having the missile taken out of commission in flight.
Robert Jacobs, yeah.
Yeah. And of course, all the footage from that going missing from the logs, which doesn't change that the logs show the missile test happened that day.
That, according to very reliable sources, that footage does exist. They still have it, and it's been viewed by people that I know.
Yeah, which is what I expected. It's part of that thing where the effort of trying to cover it up by the footage going missing just confirms it itself, because like the missile test was scheduled that day. We know standard protocol, it's going to be filmed. You're going to have multiple films of it. So it not being there, confirms there was more in there than just the missile test and that kind of thing. So
Was that the one that was shot at?
Yeah.
That was the one that I've met Bob Jacobs, and he is who he says he is. That man is not lying.
Yeah, so that's the one where the saucer flies in and shoots it 3 times.
Yep.
And then it tumbles up.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is a real case.
Yeah. So, with the history there at Vandenberg, it's kind of like an echo coming back in and saying, hey, we gave you guys a message before. We're just checking in, seeing if you need a little help on translation or, something along those lines. But I really wanted to ask you something that I think will be most helpful to the community at large out there, people that have experiences along these lines. And I think back to the first Men in Black movie. After Tommy Lee Jones shows Will Smith the real weirdness of the world, and then he spends the entire night sitting on the park bench outside, assessing how reality has changed for him. That's what I want to talk about with you is that even though there had been the acceptance that, there was this celestial activity going on, it's just part of the normal things. But once you had that, in your face experience, what's the reflection process that you had to go through?
Yeah, I'm still sitting on that bench. When I lived through this stuff, and then especially after my encounter at Vandenberg in 2005, that was something for me that needed to happen. The way that my mind works, I'm very analytical and evidence-based. I have a graduate degree in a hard science. Like, I need evidence, I need information.
Chain of data.
Yeah, but I'm very open. I'm very open to different types of experiences, and I'm very open to that. Like, we don't understand the fundamental nature of reality, right? So I'm very open to new ideas.
Right.
But while all these initial incursions were happening in Vandenberg through October, because we had 3 major events, I never saw anything, and I was desperate to. I mean, I was out of my mind. Like, I need to see it, and I could hear the radio transmissions, and I'm talking to these people that I know very well. I mean, the people that were involved are my best friends. Like, I was in their weddings. I've seen their children be born. These are not just people I've worked with. And they're describing like what they saw, and they're describing UFOs, but I didn't see any during that time frame. And I believed it, and I was living it and actively involved in it, but it was still surreal for me. So until it happened in 2005, I was in this kind of liminal state. Like, I know this is real, but I haven't seen it. And then I saw it. And that changed everything. Like, my entire outlook on reality and life and religion and human origins and the nature of reality, just everything changed in that like 5-minute, 10-minute experience I had in 2005. And I've never stopped looking up. I've never stopped thinking about what is going on, So it was a complete fundamental shift in my reality. Like, it's ontological shock.
It is.
It really is, yeah.
It's like a lot of people describe that participate in hallucinogens, specifically like when they take LSD for the first time, and then they just have a moment where they're looking at life without all the social filters of belief restrictions and enculturation, and they're just experiencing life in a moment, and then forever after that their perspective gets changed.
Yeah, it's hard to describe it in outside of religious terms. I mean, and not to say this is religious, right? But you're dealing with something that is supposed to be impossible, right? Like a burning bush, or somebody walking over water, and the thing is, after you've experienced it with your own eyes, and luckily for me, and this was another thing about like my character and the way my mind operates, I was fortunate because I wasn't alone. If I had experienced the thing in 2005 alone, I probably would have only shared it with very people that I trust, very deeply. But it's almost like I was given a gift, right? I needed to see it with my own eyes, and I needed to have witnesses with me. It couldn't just be me, because then I would have thought you've lost your mind.
Right.
So, and that happened for me. So I had 2 people I trusted were also police officers and highly credible, standing right there with. So it was like perfect for me. Like, everything I needed to happen for me to believe happened.
Well, I would like to ask a question kind of the other way around. When I hear your experience, this feels like even though you didn't see the first 2 incidents, this was like you were there for kind of a reason. You didn't see it, but you needed to be there in order to be a voice for all these people that were kind of like waiting for you to get inside that room and start sharing what happened. So it's kind of your work. I don't like this word, but you were kind of chosen for this mission, for the Vandenberg incident. How do you feel about that? Do you feel this is kind of their plan for you? This was meant for you to be their voice?
In a way, yes and no. So the thing is, like, I'm very careful not to attach any kind of the people that experience this are somehow different or special. I try to be very careful about that because it wasn't happening to me. It was happening to everybody on that base, whether they were aware of it or not. So it almost seems like whatever this phenomenon is, it appears, and then it's up to the humans watching whatever's happening to decide whether or not they're interested.
Right.
Right. And I don't really think that we get to choose what we're interested in. I think it's a deep thing, like what moves you, like what art moves you, what kind of music moves you. I don't think we get to choose that. Right. It's kind of
Right.
like instantiated. It's like baked into your personality. Like try to read a book that you don't find interesting and trick yourself into thinking it's interesting. Like you can't, right? It's like either you love this book or you're not into it. And I think there's something at play like that. It's like, okay, we're going to put the shiny thing out, the shiny lights in the forest, and which one of the humans are going to be interested and run into the shadows after? And I don't know why that is, but I'm very
So maybe it's because of the fact that you already had experiences with your family. So this was, maybe it was a weird event for the other experiencers that were there, but you heard about this already. You lived this with your family. So maybe your empathy and your consciousness were in that point where you can receive this too.
It could be. I believe that consciousness is playing an aspect in all of this. So my scientific paradigm has shifted multiple times over the last like 15 years. And I'm very much a proponent of the concept of something like panpsychism or Rupert Sheldrake's work, morphic fields, morphic resonance. I'm very interested in things like animal intelligence. Like we don't know how animals are communicating, but they certainly are in ways that we don't understand. They're navigating in ways we don't understand.
Oh, yeah.
They're passing information along in ways we don't understand.
Right.
So I definitely believe the phenomenon is somehow interacting with our consciousness. And that is kind of from experience. Like my event, maybe we should talk about my event in 2005, and that would kind of lay it out, right?
Of course.
Yes, but before we do that, I do have a question from chat that I need to address. It's from Esmeralda. And she wants to know, Jeff, how do you deal with the cognitive dissonance between your hard science background and what you have observed?
That is a very good question. For me, the way my mind operates, it's not really a problem. And that is because I am very open to ideas, technically speaking. Like if you, I really like psychology, so I read a lot about psychology, and I'm a huge proponent of the Big Five personality test. I think it's a very powerful tool to figure out yourself, right? And it gives you parameters like how open are you, how agreeable are you, how neurotic are you, on and on. And I'm very, very high on the chart for openness. So I'm open to new ideas, new experiences, new theories, and things like that. But on the other end of the psychological perspective, I'm very data driven and evidence based. It is a good blend for me because I could take new ideas or new information and try to incorporate it into my existing paradigm. And I'm very, I like to update my framework based on new information. I don't cling
Yes.
to ideas. So
Right.
if I find out I'm wrong about something, I'm like, well, good. I'll incorporate that new information and update my framework. So for
Stay
me,
open-minded.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm very open-minded, but skeptical. I don't believe everything I
Yes.
say, but I'm willing to at
Yeah.
least explore. And the more data there is on something, the easier it is to incorporate. For
Right.
example, like I used to not believe in telepathy. I thought, well, that's just too easy, right? If somebody was really psychic, just like remote view the lotto and retire. Like what are you waiting for? But over the last 20 years, through personal experience, I've seen people. I've had experiences where I've seen mothers say, "Oh my God, I need to call daycare. There's something happened to my child," and then the phone rings and it's daycare saying, "Hey, your child had an accident." Right? I don't know what that is. Not a coincidence, right?
Right.
So you have data like that, and then you have new things like the telepathy teams, right? And so I update my frame.
Yes.
I think we're constantly doing that. Would you like to discuss your personal encounter in 2005?
Sure.
Yes.
So the Vandenberg incursions happened that year, and then over the intervening years, there were other events that are not public, and I am hoping these will become public soon. Okay. And again, I'm hearing stories from other reliable, credible people with very important positions in my unit that I know well, and they're telling me they're seeing UFOs. Okay. So the evidence is piling up, and I'm not seeing any. So then everything comes to a head in 2005. We think this happened around my birthday. I had a party, so all my friends and my coworkers came over to my house. We had a big barbecue, and then like in the evening, the party wound down. Everybody left. My wife at the time was in bed in the house. I'm on base in base housing on Vandenberg. And me and two of my good friends, Brandon and Phoenix, they're both police officers. They both work with me. We're sitting in my backyard around the fire, drinking beer, talking. And we're talking about this very subject. We're talking about all the things that happened a couple of years ago because our friends are the ones that experienced it, right? We're having this deep, deep conversation about the phenomenon. And my friend Brandon is telling me his father had been retired Navy, did like 25 years in the Navy. And his dad had another spectacular, unbelievable UFO encounter, I think sometime in like the late 80s or early 90s up in the Seattle area. And Brandon was telling me and his girlfriend, they're married now. They've been married for like 20 something years, about this event that his dad lived through when him and his brother were kids. And then Phoenix kept turning around and looking. She was like distracted. And finally, I'm like, what are you looking at? She's like, do you guys see that light? And we're like, what light? So we all get away from the fire, and we're looking. And at very high altitude, we see what looks like a satellite. It's moving. It's a pinpoint of light, very high altitude, like a star, but it's moving a constant rate of speed, very slow. And it's heading west to east. And we're looking and we're like, yeah, it's a satellite. And she's like, keep watching. And then it starts to pulse with this very slow, rhythmic pulse, almost like a heartbeat or something. And the light is weird. The light is not just a white light. It's this weird, scintillating, liquidy, bluish, white, beautiful light. And at this point, it's just a pinprick way up high, but it's pulsing. And we're watching it, we're trying to figure it out, and I'm like, that's a sound. And Brandon's like, I don't know, man. Like, and then it maneuvered. And it did like a flutter. It went like, and we were like, whoa, because it was like spectacular. It just did this weird thing, like it was a leaf in the wind. And then it looked like it was coming down, and it was getting bigger, and it was getting brighter, and we're watching it, and we're getting more and more excited and freaked out. And then it vanished. It was just gone. And we're like, where'd it go? And we're looking and looking. And then that happened a couple times, and it would pop back into view. And we're like, oh, there it is. It moved over there. And we're watching it. So this is playing out over a few minutes. And then it vanished again. And it was, at this point, it was very low in altitude. Probably like around like 10,000 feet. And then it was gone. And some time went by, a few moments went by, and we were talking like, where'd it go? It's gone, it's gone. And then it popped into view, and it was like right in front of us. So it was like 200 or 300 feet over my house. It was like 30 feet in diameter. And it was just this huge, perfectly round, solid looking light with this liquidy whitish blue. It was
Wow.
like nothing I've ever seen. It was like indescribable. It was otherworldly. No noise, no nothing. We all are standing there in complete awe, freaking out. And a few seconds go by, and then it's gone. It just disappears. And we all like give out a gasp, and then I'm thinking, just keep your eye on the spot. And then I had this moment of terror. This sheer primal terror just went through my body, and I thought, oh my God, did it just abduct my wife? That thought popped into my head. Because it was right over the house. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, and then I just took a breath, and I'm like, that did not happen. And then I just kept my eye on the spot. And then what happened was weird. My head and my body tracked to the right and up. So, and then it popped into view. So when it came back into view, it had moved like maybe 100 yards to our right. So that would have been north. And it went up a little bit in elevation. It was still like only like 500 or 600 feet up. But it had moved, and then it popped into view. And when it popped into view, I was staring right at it. So unconsciously, my body and eyes had tracked it. When I'm thinking, I'm looking right over my house. And it popped into view, and we all gasped again. And then it slowly and gently accelerated and went up, and then it kept accelerating, and we watched it for over like maybe 30 seconds or less than a minute as it slowly accelerated and climbed, and then it eventually went up and became indistinguishable from the stars, and we lost it. And then it was
amazing.
Yeah. And then
changes your worldview, doesn't it?
Nothing has been the same. And then so I run into the house. The first thing I do is I go tearing into the bedroom to make sure my wife is there. She's there. And then I picked up the landline and I called the control center. Now, an important detail, when this occurred, the position I was in, I was the non-commissioned officer in charge of our law enforcement program. So I was in a somewhat senior position in the unit. I developed all of our policy. I dictated like how we do our job. So I pick up the phone, I call the desk, and I'm like, hey man, you guys are not going to believe this, but here's what just happened. And they're like, are you kidding me? And I'm like, yeah. So I told them, you need to wake up the commander. You need to make all the notifications, notify the command post. I want you to call everybody and find out radar tracks, weather balloons, and everything. I want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
So like 15 minutes go by, they call me back. They're like, there's nothing on radar. There's no balloons, no aircraft. We've made the notifications. The commander's aware. You're good to go. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then later on, when I came back into work, I typed this all up. We all did statements, and we filed an official report. So that was what happened to me and my friends.
Okay, what I was going to say is this. I was the witness with, you always say that it is better for you to be with someone to show credibility in your sighting. And I would have to agree with you on that, because I had 11 other people with me in broad daylight, 1,000-foot cloud cover, and we saw 6 rectangular craft with like morphing orange fire on the inside of it, on each object, in what I would call a military formation. It was they were evenly spaced in a horizontal line, and the second one from the left was tumbling end over end. And we saw this in broad daylight. Now, we tried to film it, and that's the one thing I was going to ask you. Did you think about filming what you saw? No.
I mean, so, and this comes up a lot, and people, it's a valid question. People are like, why didn't you pull out your phone? Why didn't you get a picture right? So, various reasons. First of all, back in 2003, I had a flip phone, and I don't remember ever taking any pictures with it. So,
Right.
and I don't remember being on any kind of social media back then. And so it just wasn't a thing for me back then. Like, I used to carry around a little cardboard disposable camera. That's what I used back in the day. Like when I deployed, that's what I used to take pictures. It wasn't my phone back in 2001.
Right.
So the phones weren't what they are now.
Right.
And the other thing is, when this happened to me, I was in a complete state of awe, like nothing I've ever experienced in my life. And the last thought in my head was to run and look away and fumble around trying to capture the moment. And I think that's pretty common, I've had incidents where I've tried to like get out the phone and capture things, and it's difficult. I mean, that's happened last year or two.
It is. And sometimes when you experience these things for the first time, it's like it takes a time for your brain to understand what you are looking at. So till you take the phone, even now, it goes so fast that you already lost it.
Sometimes when you try to take a picture, though, they seem to sense that you're going to photograph them and they move off.
Yeah, the trickster element, and I have witnessed this in the last, let's say, 6 months, because I've been working with a lot of people that are innovators, developers, tech people that are building out equipment, right, to solve this mystery. And they are experiencing what we call the trickster element, where their phone, I've seen people's phones just completely like crash, their equipment shut down, their batteries drain.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen this happen like in real time. So that is an aspect of the phenomenon that we need to account for and study and investigate.
Esmeralda in the chat says, I agree with Jeff. I never think of taking a pic until after something has finished. And then I think I should have taken a pic.
Yeah. I do that all the time with like beautiful sunsets and things like that. And I'm the kind of person that enjoys the moment.
Yeah.
And I'm bad about like, there's all these moments I've missed with my children. I'm like, I should have videoed that. But then I'm like, just keep it in your head. It's better.
This is the kind of comment I normally get. The thing in the sky happened so fast. If I didn't have a phone in my hand, I would not have caught it. That's the truth. You have to be actively filming the sky, or you're not going to pick up these things. They're too quick, or they seem to sense your presence in the fact that you're recording them. And sometimes they don't want to be recorded, so either they turn off their lights or they move away. That's what I've noticed with my Psionics Aurora Black. So you catch them if they want to be seen, or you catch them accidentally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nos.
What I was thinking about with that is the difference in quality of experience that is had by experiencers, whether they're trying to record it or not.
Right.
Because when they're trying to record it, their focus is on other people's experience of that event. The act of trying to record it is a shift of their consciousness to what other people think, instead of them being fully present in that event and trying to engage in that interaction that's happening. It fundamentally changes the experience.
Right. I understand that. Yeah.
I agree. And I've had some interesting conversations about exactly that. Like, for example, I met James Fowler from Skywatch, and he was describing situations where the UAP seems to be able to read your intent.
Right,
So,
exactly.
for example, they're like, okay, let's turn on another piece of equipment and capture some data.
Oh, yeah.
And then that piece of equipment, as they're reaching for it, the power's gone, the battery drains, or it crashes.
Pilots have recorded the same thing with their avionics, right? When they go to activate tracking, system crashing on them. Yeah. It's absolutely aware of our thoughts, and I know that I can explain technologically to you right now exactly how that's possible. I mean, if y'all want that, let's go ahead and make that part of this. Okay, so when we came up with the ability to do EEGs, we're looking at actually 100 years ago this year, I believe. This is the centennial anniversary of EEG technology. So you put the electrodes on your head and it reads the brain waves that are developed. We learned how to be able to map these, map the signals that come back to be able to tell where in the brain they're happening. So think 100 years ago, the distance that the electrodes we had back then had a maximum distance of about this from the point of origin of that electromagnetic signal to what it could detect. Our radio reception technology over the last 100 years, now this is us, not the others, not the outsiders, right? Our radio reception technology in the last 100 years, we are 1 trillion times more sensitive with our radio reception technology than we were when the EEGs came out. We don't need to actually have electrodes on people's heads to be able to receive the radio waves that your brain is throwing off as the result of thinking. Now, when you just factor in the way that technology develops over time, we are constantly broadcasting our thoughts. We could have the technology in place right now if we wanted to, for actually intercepting and translating the thoughts of everyone in the buildings to their audio and visual scripts. We have the AI that's doing that from taking direct readings, but we have the ability to do that remotely. You just factor the age of development on radio reception technology, and yes, absolutely, something that's within a few miles of you can intercept your radio waves that you are putting off, translates that information to understand your intentions before you even have the opportunity to act on them. That's science.
Well, they can image dreams now, which is like, allegedly, right? It's like, what does that even mean?
Well, that I've been tracking it because it's part of the stuff that we need for the future developments. But yeah, they've started with teaching AI how to read the visualization process of humans. So they would have the EEGs on them recording their brainwaves while people look at paintings. And they would show the AI the painting the person is looking at to understand how what they saw was, resulting in those brainwave patterns. And then they got to the point of taking away the paintings, from the AI so that it couldn't see, but it's looking at the brainwaves of people looking at them and then recreating the images that they saw. Now, we were at this place 5 years ago, as well as them being able to directly on screen extract your internal monologue. The words you are thinking in your head, it can put out on the screen.
That's terrifying.
It can say them out loud. Okay, now this was all 5 years ago. So where this is going is to have the ability for the EEG to record your active brain processes so that you can have dream recordings as VR experiences. Whatever happens in your sleep becomes VR. That's going to be the toxic technology that replaces cell phones and everything else. That's what people are going to be obsessed over. We're not going to have TV shows and movies anymore. Watching other people's dreams, interacting with other people's dreams is going to be the entertainment everyone focuses on. And the black market that's going to come from that is going to be horrible. The most horrible thing you can imagine.
Yeah.
But that technology is coming into play. It's not stoppable. It's going to happen. We're not socially, ethically prepared for the regulations on that, and no one's trying to regulate what's going to happen because they're not anticipating that. But this is all part of what comes out of that understanding. This technology was always going to happen. The order of operations of technology developed increases in sensitivity. This was going to happen. It was an inevitability.
Indeed.
Polly.
Well, since you come from the military, and thank you so much for your service, sir.
Thank you.
We had lately these allegations from Ross Coulthard about the Tic Tac, and that it was made by Lockheed and Martin. When you see the kind of technology that you saw in your own experience, and even the craft that was described, the other one in the first two incidents, what's your opinion about it? Do you think even the Tic Tac is man-made? And if these things are man-made or reversed technology, who is driving those crafts?
Yeah, I mean, that is the $1 million question, right? So the thing I saw, it never entered my mind that it might be human technology. It was I describe it as otherworldly. It was a solid liquid light. So it never even entered my mind that it might be a piloted craft. It just was there. Now, as far as the Tic Tac, the issue with the Tic Tac, it is in the historical record.
Yes.
So, for example, the Presque Isle event that my grandparents saw, there were two craft involved in that incident. The one that landed, but there was also a Tic Tac or egg seen over like a 2-week period leading up to the landing. And, we've got flying butane tanks from the 1930s. And
right.
So all of the current explanations about reverse engineered craft, either from World War II to Lockheed now, do not account for the historical record. Unless we're talking about time travel. The CIA is going back to, buzzing Christopher Columbus, as he's coming across the ocean, because Christopher Columbus documented a UAP event.
Right.
in his journey to the new world, right? And
Right.
on and on. So none of these explanations account for the historical record. So that's where I begin. Now, is it possible that they've reverse engineered or engineered this technology? Sure. But that opens a whole universe of questions. Like, why isn't it being implemented? Like, if they had a Tic Tac in 2003, in 2004, if that's what Dave Fravor saw, if it was just Lockheed, then why are we waiting 20 years to use that technology? We could,
Right.
Lockheed would have, it would mean that Lockheed is in charge of the planet. Like, period. Lockheed could be doing whatever they wanted. They could be building out infrastructure on the moon.
Yeah.
I mean,
In
they could be
Jupiter.
doing whatever
Right.
they wanted, right? And if it was an adversarial, if it was the Chinese, like right now, if the drones in Jersey were Chinese, then that means it's checkmate. The Chinese have won, and they are in charge of the planet.
Right,
Yes.
exactly.
And if the Chinese are in charge of the planet, then why are they playing games? Why aren't they
Right.
just building out cities on the moon, New Beijing? They could get there in 1 second.
Right.
So I'm kind of deep into the like underworld of UFO land. I hear a lot of information coming from the inside. But none of it makes sense. Like if Lockheed has the tech, why don't they come out and say, we can change the world and we're in charge? Actually, Lockheed Martin is in charge of the world because we have Tic Tacs and we could go from space to the bottom of the ocean and back to the moon in less than a second.
Where would they have these Tic Tacs? Like, if they have these Tic Tacs, I would expect like a warehouse. Where do you think the government can hide these Tic Tacs?
Oh, there's a lot of underground bases. I would say one of them is Dugway Proving Grounds. There have been leaks about information pertaining to Dugway Proving Grounds as the site for craft that are being launched for the U.S. Space Force.
To underground bases?
Yes.
No.
I'm looking about Lockheed Martin, right? Lockheed Martin, I think they're conflating their importance in regards to the Tic Tac, because like Jeff said, the historic record goes way back for flying Tic Tacs. And back in the day when we didn't even know about them yet. I mean, we saw the reports in newspapers and so on and so forth, and some were even photographed in tintype. I saw one in tintype against a cloud that was actually a Tic Tac. And that disproves the theory that all Tic Tacs are made by Lockheed Martin. So Jeff is correct in saying that. I would like to go down the panel now, take last questions. Nos?
So the last question I have for you is, with everything that you've been through in your experiences and research and motivations surrounding the field ufology, what direction are you being pulled in the focus of where you feel you need to exert your efforts next?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm not trying to convince anyone about any kind of truth.
Right.
What I'm doing is I'm inviting people to take a look. So I feel like my rule now, like, is like I was telling you guys before we jumped on the call, that I've met all these extraordinary people by
Right.
by jumping into this UFO world,
Mhm.
and
Right.
it's people from all walks of life. I mean, it just runs the gamut of humanity, right? And I feel like I want to give those people a voice. And they don't have to be UFO celebrities or scientists or anything. Like I've met so many just regular people like me that have had these crazy experiences, and some of them are ongoing. You know, so that's really what I'm focused on now. I feel that like people need a safe place to talk about this stuff, and it doesn't have to be
Yes.
public.
Right.
Agree.
Well, yeah, I'm working with a lot of people behind the scenes, and what we're trying to do is give people a voice, a public platform to come out, and that's what my podcast is going to be about. And also behind the scenes, I talk to a lot of people that are never going to come out public, and
Yeah.
they just kind of need, and I need it too. I like this topic can be completely overwhelming.
Right.
I have to take
Yes.
breaks, and I need people. For 20 years, I was kind of alone in this. Luckily, I had like my buddies from Vandenberg, and every like year we would get on a call and go through the event and be like, did that happen? And they're like, yeah. We'd go through it, like, what happened?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just to
Yeah,
keep
it's
myself-
true. I told you backstage my first experience was when I was 7 years old, but I started talking about it only like this year, and it's been like 40 years.
Yeah.
So
So, yeah,
better now than never, I guess.
Yeah, I'm looking to give a platform for people to share their experiences and have discussions. And also, I'm working with a lot of people in technology and engineering. I want to. I'm not waiting for the government anymore. I don't
Thank you.
like
Yes.
everything that comes out of the government at this point is suspect.
Right.
So I'm not
Yes.
waiting for them to provide me data. I'm not waiting. We might be decades behind them as far as the information, but we're going to catch up quick. The people
Yes.
that are on the case now are brilliant, they're innovative, and they're dedicated, and they're putting together technology to solve this problem on every front.
Yeah.
On every front, biological, medical, we're looking at different optic systems. We're looking at consciousness. We're using artificial intelligence.
Mhm.
And that's my message. Like, now is the time to get involved.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly.
And get eyes on the sky, and good things are coming. And I think in the next year, you're going to be able to buy a commercial UAP detection equipment for like under $500. So people could get like 10 of their friends together, pitch in $100, buy one of these systems, mount it on your car, and get involved. And I'm like
Right.
so excited about that. We're
Yeah.
going to try to empower just average everyday people.
Yep. I've actually seen a couple of those systems. They're pretty small already. They're trying to miniaturize them even more. We've actually had Avi Loeb on at least twice
Oh, that's great.
on the channel, and he's explained a lot of things about Project Galileo, which is what he's involved in, and the search for UAP with equipment on the ground and equipment actually in space.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, just a quick note, we do have 4K footage of giant ships in high Earth orbit. And that's because the United States government has decided to turn some of its satellites that face down toward Earth to observe things out into space. And that's why we're picking them up now. So that's something new. I don't know how new that is, but it is new. So I am not waiting on the government either. We'll wait until we turn blue if that's the case. I do believe it's going to be a groundswell of a movement of people within the community and people with outside the community, normal people that are having sightings and encounters and events that happen to them. And we try to do the same thing that you're doing, which is collaborating with them to get their story out so that people hear the repetition of the amount of sightings that are occurring. And it seems like the sightings are on an uptick. I've seen a lot of things in the last year. I would have to say I've seen over 100 anomalous lights. I'm not going to say that they're UFOs because I don't know for certain. So I always refer to them as objects.
I'm gonna bring a van out to you, man, loaded with equipment. I'm gonna put you guys into contact with some of the people I'm working with. My whole thing is like, podcasters are the frontline troops in this fight, and my whole thing is I'm gonna introduce as many of these people working on this issue as I can to one another,
Right.
and then to the podcasters to get it out. So I'll put you guys into contact with some of these people, because I keep meeting people that are having daily or nightly experiences.
Right.
And the good thing now is people have mobile units. They can, Avi can't move his equipment, right? It's static.
Right.
But the next wave is coming. The vans are coming.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Polly, you're muted.
Sorry. I don't know if you know his work, but I feel you should talk to Rainerio Hernandez. He's an experiencer. Tim, if you have Jeff's email, send it to
Not
me.
yet.
So I will send him. Okay, so I will, we will make the contacts. But Rainerio, it's not only an experiencer, but he's also gathering scientists and, so many people together in order to work in what you are doing right now. I think you should just have a look on what you are doing each other, because I think you could do a great thing sharing your information.
We have an interview with Rainerio Hernandez on UFO Man. So if you want to check it out, you can go there and see who he is and what he's all about. And Polly, maybe you can leave his email in the private chat so that Jeff can get it after the show.
Yeah, we'll coordinate. I'll shoot you guys in. We'll get emails and
yes. Amazing.
Okay, I want to thank.
I just wanted to say thank you for sharing with us your own experience and this amazing incident and the work that you are doing, your voice and the support that you are giving to the experiencers. The stigma is still so big and so many are still afraid to talk. So I so agree with you. We are a critical step to give these people a place where they can feel secure and tell their stories. So thank you so much. It was an honor to meet you, and I hope we will stay in touch.
Oh, for sure. Thank you so much, Polly. This has been a wonderful experience. I really appreciate everything you guys are doing. I really do. Thank you. Thank you.
We would welcome you to come back sometime on the channel.
Absolutely.
uh,
Absolutely.
and talk more.
I'll have you guys on mine. That's the thing. Like I really like collaborating. That's what I mean. Like podcasters are the frontline troops.
Right.
And I think it's great when other podcasters have other podcasters on, and because they've got all this knowledge and information. So collaboration is key.
I can't speak
Agree.
I can't speak for Polly or Nos, but I'd be willing to come on your channel. I'm sure they would, because we want to get the message out. Because it's about the message.
Yeah.
That's all it's about, is the message. And I want to thank you very much, Jeff, for spending your time this afternoon. I know you said you had some little kids around, and I don't want to take you away from them much longer. I saw your cat. Very nice cat.
I've got 3 of them. They're all surrounding me right now.
They want your attention. Anyways, I want to thank everybody who watched online, everybody who participated in chat. Thank you very much. And as always, we want to say good afternoon and have a good rest of your Saturday. Thank you, Jeff. We'll have you back again soon.
And thank you for everybody for watching. I really appreciate you paying attention to this topic. It's the most important thing. We're living in a time where history is being made.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining. I appreciate it.